Ankit and Nileka.
Hello, everyone. This is Ankit Rajput. As Vibhor mentioned, I'm with UiPath from last couple of years, and I'm a senior technical account manager here. I have expertise in RPA, infrastructure, in telecom industry. So that's all about me. I'll pass on to Nilekha.
Hey, hi guys. Welcome to the series. My name is Nilekha. I work as a technical account manager alongside Ankit and Anand. My expertise is RPA. I have close to 5.5 years experience with UiPath and RPA technologies.
And one point I missed that you will be on mute while the session is going on. However, at the end of the session, you will be able to unmute. Also, we will be sharing a link, Slido link, where you can ask your question, and rest of you can also vote on your favorite question, or you can downvote as well. And based on that, we will be taking the answering all the top questions, and our speakers will share more details on that.
Yep. So this is the link for the LinkedIn profile for me and for Nilekha. So this one is for me and this one is for Nilekha if you want to connect. And today for the question and answers, we are going to use an application called Slido. You can scan this QR code and it will take you to the web page. With this application, first we are going to use it for Q&A. You can type in your questions whenever you think you want to ask something. And in the end of session, we are going to have some question and answer sessions as well, where we are going to show up a few questions for you, which you may answer. Okay, so let's start the session. Just let me know if I can move it from here. Most probably everybody has got it up. Nilekha, it would be good if you can post it into the chat, maybe the link or this image.
I have shared the link already.
Okay. Okay, so welcome to the first session of this chapter. This is UiPath Infrastructure Platform Infrastructure chapter. So these are the already planned events for this particular chapter. So this is the first session on this chapter, that is UiPath Platform Deployment Architecture, which we are conducting today. The next will be the installation walkthrough. For the orchestrator, it will be a single node installation with all the prerequisites and everything covered during that session. Next is going to be the installation live walkthrough on the orchestrator multi-node. You can think of it as a follow-up session from here. So wherever we left in the single node, we'll pick it up in the multi-node session. Once we are good with the orchestrator, we will start working on the other applications like Insights. The next, same, it will be going to give you a very good overview about how you should install it. And then the next is how you can use it. Next session is going to be on UiPath Test Suite. Again, installation and the uses of this application. And the last one in this series will be the installation and uses. These are the events which are already planned. We may come up with a few more, series or maybe sessions, depending upon the feedback from you guys and the need, basically. So this is going to be the agenda for today. Just one thing, if I'm going very fast or very slow, please just give an alert. Maybe Vibhor or Nilekha can give it so that I can take it up accordingly. So today's agenda, first we are going to discuss about the UiPath platform landscape. What are the applications, in which phase these applications are lies? Then we are going to discuss about the deployment options. What are the deployment options we have? Then we are going to discuss about the design principle, when you should think about the scalability, resiliency, or DR, or BCP, or something like that. And then we are going to discuss about the data flow, how the data is moving between these applications. We have few examples as well, which will be covering Azure and AWS infrastructure. And then we'll have a Q&A session. Okay, so let's talk about the UiPath platform overview, or basically all the phases. So we have divided entire RPA lifecycle into 5 phases. The first one being is discover, then build, then manage, then you are going to run it, and then you're going to engage your business users or maybe your COE team members as well. So in Discover, we have 4 tools, which is starting from Automation Hub, where you can store all your ideas, You can you can store the documentation for those ideas. You can have ROI calculation as well for those ideas. The next tool will be the task capture, which can help you to document your processes, like creating the PDD or maybe getting a sample XAML file, so that it will be a skeleton from where you can start building up your entire process. The next tool is the process mining, which is basically when you don't know where to automate or where you can have possibilities for improvement in the process, then you can utilize process mining, which will work with your application logs, and it will give you the areas where you can improve or you can automate basically. Then once you have that available, okay, this is the area where I can automate, then task mining will come into picture, where you can install one client on the user machine and get to know, okay, what are the steps that particular user is taking which can be automated. Then comes to the build part. Once you have all this data, okay, what needs to be automated, you will come to the build part basically. Then we have first tool, here we have the Studio family, be it Studio or Studio X. Then the next is the integration service, which provides you the ability to integrate with different platforms, be it Salesforce, O365, or be it any application basically. Then the third is the document understanding, which will help you to digitize your documents as well as extract the information from the documents. Last one in the build phase is the marketplace, where you can share your information like any component or workflow or templates, as well as you can get the same thing from that marketplace. Once you are done with the build, you go to the manage, where you are managing everything. So here we have Orchestrator, which is going to manage your processes, robots, schedules. Then we have test manager, where you can manage your test cases for the test lifecycle. Then we have AI Center, where you can, basically a platform for ML models, where you can deploy your own ML models, or you can utilize any out of the box ML model, which is provided by UiPath. Next is the data service. Data service is a way to basically store some data into the, somewhere where the robots can start utilizing it. You can feed in some data, you can retrieve, you can update, that kind of stuff data service provides. The last here is the insights, which is basically a tool which helps you to see what is happening in your RPA world. You can, you can build out some dashboard on ROI, how the robots are working, how the processes are working, is there any exception and all. This will come with the insights. Then we'll go to the run. So here we have robots basically. We have basically 4 kinds of robots: attended, unattended, test robots. These all are basically on-prem or IaaS services. And then we have a new offering from UiPath, that is Automation Cloud Robots, which is a SaaS service from UiPath. We are going to discuss about IaaS and SaaS as well in the upcoming slide. So just wait for some time. The last phase is the engage, where you need to interact with the business user or the end user as well. So the first is the apps here, which is basically a no code platform, where you can build out very good UI, which are going to interact with your orchestrator, with integration services or data services, and help you out, get some data and give some data to the users. The next is the assistant. It's basically a robot sitting on the user machine. If they want, they can start executing any automations which is intended to be executed from their side. The last is the action center. Action Center is again involving users into the unattended automations, where you have unattended automations, but some user intervention is required, maybe for some decisions, or maybe to get some inputs, or providing them some inputs, or just getting a verification or a validation from them. Then you can start using the Action Center. Okay, this is all about the platform landscape. Now let's start moving into the deployment options. So before going into the deployment options, I would like to discuss few terminologies which we are going to utilize during the entire session. So there are basically 4 terms when we say about deployment options. First is on-premises, second is IaaS, and then PaaS, and then SaaS. So all are different. Basically, when we say on-premises, that means everything will be managed by the customer or the end user who is managing it. So be it in networking, OS, server, everything will be managed by the user, or basically the customer. Then comes the IaaS services. So IaaS basically is nothing else but infrastructure as a service, where you can like you can take an example of Azure, AWS, or GCP. They are providing you everything. You're getting a VM from there and you get doing everything. When IaaS, till virtualization, it's the responsibility of the service provider. After it, from the OS till the application, is the responsibility of the user. Then it comes a PaaS. PaaS is basically platform as a service where you are getting a platform. You are not getting any VM or OS to manage. You are just getting a platform where you can host your applications and start utilizing it. Here, the responsibility again, you can see in the gray, this is the responsibility of the service provider, and in orange, the responsibility of the user. Then the last offering is basically option is SaaS. So in SaaS, everything will be managed by your service provider. You just need to configure your application for your own use. For an example, if I just take an example of UiPath Automation Cloud, then you have to just define your machines, your processes, or your robots. Okay, now let's move to the deployment option. What is UiPath supports as a deployment options? So as we discussed about 4 options, basically on-premises, IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. So for us, from UiPath perspective, IaaS and on-prem is almost similar because we are going to utilize the VMs there. So whether it's in your own data center or it's on any service provider data center, it doesn't matter to UiPath basically. So the first offering we have is standalone products. When I say standalone products, that means Orchestrator, Test Manager, Insights, Action Center, these all are products which are available as a standalone product. You will get MSI wherever you want to install. We need a virtual machine or maybe a physical machine to install it. The next is the automation suite. It's again a IaaS service, not a service basically. It's again a software from UiPath, which is bundled. It's a bundle of basically all the components you have from UiPath except the process mining. Rest everything, be it Orchestrator, Test Manager, Task Mining, AI Center, Document Understanding, everything will be bundled into it, and it will be hosted on your servers or on physical or basically virtual hardwares from any service provider. The last offering is Automation Cloud. It's a SaaS offering from UiPath side. There is no installation required. Everything will be managed by the UiPath. You just need to register to SaaS, basically Automation Cloud, and start utilizing it. Now let's start moving to the architecture. Just interrupt me if I'm going too fast, please. Okay, so this is UiPath Platform Architecture. It's just an overview where we try to depict all the applications. So let's start from the server components. So this box is basically a server component, this one, where you have all the server components. There are 2 options to deploy each and everything except the process mining. Either you can have an automation cloud, which is available, like process mining is available on automation cloud, or you can have a automation suite where you can host all the application except process mining. And the last option is standalone deployment, but we don't have all the applications available for standalone deployment. For an example, task mining, AI center, or document understanding, these are services or automation hub which are not available as a standalone deployment option. So we have only 2 options for this application. Either you go for SaaS service or you go for automation suite. So these are all the server applications. Once we have the server application sorted out, then we have to think about our desktop applications or the client application. So there are 2 parts of it. One is the assistant, as we see it in the engage section, and then the robot services, which we saw in the run section, basically in the run phase. So this one is the robot service, where you have a service installed on the user machine, not the user machine, basically the machine where you're executing your robots. And then that robot service is initiating the executors which are interacting with the client applications. Again, here we have multiple options of deployment, like you can, like I mentioned already, automation cloud robots. So it's a SaaS service. You can deploy your robots on UiPath Cloud. Next is on-premise. You can install on your premise service, maybe on your data center, or you can install it on a public cloud, maybe Azure or AWS. Next is the desktop application like Assistant, or maybe task mining client, or task capture, Studio X. These are the application. Normally, these are lies on a user machine. where user, maybe if it's take an example of a studio where they can develop their automations. Task mining, so that it can record all the actions which user is performing. Same as like task capture, but task capture is just for the documentation purpose, but task mining is it's recording all your actions and then providing you some outputs as well. This is where you can automate basically. We have here robot.js APIs, which is a framework from where you can integrate your assistant with other applications. So we are going to discuss about in detail in subsequent slides. We have some client applications like browser or mobile app, which, or we have a mobile app for Orchestrator where you can manage or your infrastructure, not infrastructure basically, or your robots or processes from your mobile app. So when I say mobile app, that means from anywhere. We have Action Center that is available on browser as well as on mobile app, but there is no separate mobile app for Action Center. It's embedded within the Orchestrator itself. The last thing I would like to mention here is the custom clients. Basically, this one, you see this purple box. It's basically in the Orchestrator we have given a functionality. We call it external apps, where you can integrate your other application with Orchestrator. It works on OAuth authentication, OAuth 2.0 to be specific, where you can integrate with Orchestrator APIs to feed in data or to get some data. For an example, if you have ServiceNow or maybe SAP, or for that matter, any application, you can authenticate yourself and interact with the Orchestrator. You can use APIs to trigger the jobs or maybe to feed in the queues. That kind of stuff you can do. In Orchestrator, we have basically one thing I forgot to mention, but I'd like to mention here. In Orchestrator, basically, Orchestrator, we just say Orchestrator, but it's a combination of three services. First is the Orchestrator, which is managing processes or robots and that kind of stuff. Second is Identity, which is managing all your authentication part and integration with maybe different IDPs like Google or SAML or Okta providers. And the last one is the webhook, which is basically a notification service, which is sending all the webhooks to your application wherever you have integrated it. Let's move to the next. Okay, so as we discussed about IaaS or on-prem, so this the first example I would like to give. It's not example, basically a basic diagram. It's covering the single node architecture, which is a bare minimum architecture to support or basically to install the orchestrator. This is the very basic requirement. It is suitable for maybe dev environments or sandbox environment, but never recommended for the production. Because there is no high availability or scalability, or even in case anything happens, there is no resiliency into this particular architecture. We are going to discuss about the multi-node architectures as well, where we will have high availability and we can take care of the loads as well. We are going to discuss about DR sites as well, but that will come into the subsequent slides. So in the single node architecture, it's a very simple. You need one server or maybe a VM for the orchestrator if you're going with IaaS, and one just database. It can be installed on a VM, or you can have it maybe if you are on Azure, you can have Azure PaaS SQL. If you're on AWS, you can have an RDS instance. So it doesn't matter to us. We just need a SQL connectivity from the orchestrator perspective, and we are good. Again, it's not never recommended for production load. Okay, next move to the, again, I'm going to discuss about IaaS. So this is how automation suite architecture is. So once you install automation suite, it will come up something like this. You will have all the application hosted within the automation suite itself. Then you have all the fabric and the management services where you can have alerting and monitoring, and then the cluster management. It's basically a line. Automation suite basically works on the Linux machines and Linux plus Kubernetes clusters. But Kubernetes cluster and everything will be managed by automation suite itself. You do not need to worry about any cluster or any node or something like that. Everything will be managed by automation suite. Once you have installed the automation suites, high availability and DR is basically automatically built in into it, because if something goes wrong, it will automatically switch over the load from one machine to another machine, or but depending on, like, if suppose you have 3 nodes into your architecture, and like suppose node 3 is down, then it will automatically shift all your loads to node 1 and node 2. So it will, like, DR and HA is automatically built in automation suite. We are going to discuss about a little bit of about architecture as well. So here, once you have automation suite, it will become like a private SaaS offering for your organization, where you can provision your own organizations, and within organization you can prepare your, like, create your own tenants. It's going to be the same as we have an automation cloud, but there all the things will be managed by UiPath. But here everything will be managed by your organization only. And then the robots are going to be the same as you have it today. These are going to be on premises. We don't have automation cloud robot functionality available in automation suite yet. Next is automation suite architecture. So I'm going to discuss about a very brief about the automation suite architecture. So this is, you can think of, as I mentioned, so this is a multi-node architecture. Basically, we do support single node architecture, but we do not recommend you to have it. We only recommend only for evaluation purposes, where you have only one server node executing everything. So the minimum requirement is you should have 3 server nodes, 1 SQL server, 1 load balancer, and 1 DNS. DNS for routing all the routes to particular applications. We have as I mentioned, we have multiple applications in automation suite, not the UiPath applications, but there are different applications which are responsible for monitoring and alerting purposes, or managing your cluster and all. You do not need to do anything, but we have those services available. So DNS is required for that. Then we need a load balancer, because load will be distributed within 3 nodes at least. So that is why we need a load balancer. And server nodes are the nodes which are going to manage all your loads, your cluster management, your storage management. Everything will be managed by the server nodes. We have scalability options as well in automation suite. In case if you think you have very heavy load and 3 server nodes are not able to handle it, maybe for a month or 2, you have extra load. What you can do, you can involve few agent nodes. Agent nodes are nothing else but just maybe a bare metal physical servers, or maybe a VM, which will be responsible to execute the loads. But it will be managed by the server node. You cannot decide which load should go to which machine. It will be entirely managed by the cluster, and it's all automatic. There is no logic or configuration available for user to define, okay, which load is going to run on server nodes or on agent nodes. All that data, whatever data you are storing, like the packages, or in case of document standing, your documents, in case of task mining, your recordings, everything will be stored on the server nodes only. Agent nodes are only the worker nodes where the load will be executed, but there will be no data stored on it. Okay, that's all about automation suite for now. Next, I would like to discuss about the PaaS architecture. So as we mentioned, we have options to install Orchestrator in PaaS as well. There are few benefits and few restrictions as well. So here with PaaS, as I mentioned, we have 3 services within Orchestrator. So in case of PaaS, you have to install all 3 services independently. It cannot be clubbed into one. So you have to create all 3 app services here. One more thing I'd like to mention here, which I forgot basically. This PaaS architecture is possible only on Azure. Azure has this functionality available. They call it Azure App Service, where you can host Orchestrator as a PaaS. Again, we need here 1 SQL server and 3 app services. Just a minute. Again, we have 2 options to install. First, we have UiPath platform available in Azure Marketplace. You can just search for it and click it. You have to provide few details to the installer, and then it will configure all the applications like Orchestrator, Identity, Webhook, everything for you. You have to for example, you have to give tenant ID, you have to give your resource group and all. Rest everything will be taken care by the installer. The another option we have is like suppose few customers says we don't want to give this option to anybody. We cannot give that kind of access to to any application. So they configure these services. They create the app service for us, And once the app services are created, we have PowerShell scripts which can help you to install UiPath applications on these services, be it Orchestrator or Identity. So in that case, everything will be configured on the infra side, will be configured by the customer Azure team, and then you run the PowerShell scripts to install Orchestrator and Identity. There are two benefits. Basically, I'd like to mention here, because it's a PaaS service, so definitely you don't need to manage anything on the infra side. You do not need to worry about the VMs or anything of that sort. You don't need to worry about networking. Definitely you have to, but rest everything you don't need to worry about. There is a one very great benefit comes with it. In case if you want to deploy it in HA, you just need to configure a property and provide it the the HA details. As soon as you provide it, you don't need to provision another node or something like that. It will automatically become a highly available solution. That is the best benefit I'd see with the PaaS architecture. Last, I would like to discuss as we discuss about the SaaS. So last is the SaaS offering. So this is you find it very similar with the automation suite, but you just think about here. This area from here till here will be managed by UiPath, and this will be managed by customer. Until unless you are using any robots, maybe automation cloud robots from UiPath. So this is the architecture of automation set, or basically automation cloud, where we will have multiple companies, or basically the organization created, and within your organization you can create your own tenants, and within each and every tenant you can enable the service whatever you want. So be it Orchestrator, AI Center, Automation Hub, Insights, whatever service you want, you can have it. You also you can have multi-tenant options available within your organization, which you can create for your own use. By default, it comes with high availability and DR. In case of any node or something goes down, it will automatically spin up. Everything will be basically in the background. It will automatically spin up new hardware, and it will take over. In terms of security as well, we have industry leading certification already done for our automation cloud, like HIPAA, SOC 2 Type 2, ISO certifications, as well as we have Veracode verification for all our codes deploy here. We are providing 99.9% uptime guarantee for our automation cloud. It's not only available in only single region. You can have it in, I think it's available in 6 regions: Europe, United States, Japan, Australia, Canada, and Singapore. Many more may come depending upon the requirements. Okay, that is all about the SaaS architecture. Now let's move to multi-node deployments or highly available solutions. Hope you are able to see it. It's not very small. So once we say about scalability or resiliency, basically the design principles. So any production server, or for that matter, any server which is serving many users, should not be should not have a single point of failure. So here we have converted one orchestrator node to multiple nodes basically. So you see there are two nodes, but that's not the only requirement to make it highly available. Once we have multiple nodes of orchestrator, we need a software, or basically a tool which is going to manage the cache of both the applications. So for that we are using HAA. Again, we cannot have one node of HAA, because in case one node goes down, there will be no HAA. That means all the infrastructure will break down automatically. So we should have at least 3 nodes here for HAA. Now the next thing is basically the packages. So we need a shared storage in this case, because we cannot have packages on any one machine. Otherwise, again, it's going to be a single point of failure. So we should have a shared storage, which will be shared between these two orchestrator nodes. And both the nodes are going to store all the packages here itself. Next thing is our persistence layer. So again, SQL Server. So SQL Server, like if you are on Azure, you can have that kind of functionality available from Azure itself. If you are on AWS, you can have multi-AG database, which is going to do the same thing for you. Again, if you are on-prem, you can have SQL Server always on availability group, which is basically a combination of multi-node architecture for SQL Server. And for you, it will be just one URL and you are accessing it. If you have like Elasticsearch, or basically anything which is related to log storage, again, you should have multiple. In case single node failure, everything will be down. So that is why we have suggested to we always suggest to have at least 3 nodes. And once you have this available, now you have 2 orchestrators. So it cannot work because robots are going to connect to the one single node, basically single URL. So there should be a network load balancer here in between the user or the robots. So network, so you will have a URL from the network load balancer, and then it is distributing the load to the multiple orchestration nodes. It's not necessary to have 2 nodes. You can have 3, 4, 5, depending upon your load or your basically the resiliency plan. Here in this case, the you know that the orchestrator work on SSL. So SSL offloading is going to be happen again on the orchestrator nodes. So your certificate should have both the nodes address into the SAN or basically DNS defined. Otherwise, it will not work and the entire system will break down. Your robots will not be able to connect to the orchestrator. Because once this system starts working, you cannot decide which request is going to which orchestrator. It may be possible first heartbeat goes to this node and the second head will go to this node. So that is why you should have same certificate on both the machines, which should be having the SAN or DNS name defined in the same certificate for both the servers, or for that matter, whatever number of nodes you have, you should have all that defined in the DNS. Once you have highly available solution available, the next thing comes into your mind, that is the BCP, business continuity plan. In case this entire data center or entire region goes down, then what we are going to do? Then for that, we normally define a DR sites. So here, this is the example of active passive. In this case, this is a primary data center where entire load is working. And this is your passive data center where all the servers and services are sitting idle until unless there is a disaster scenario. So again, here we have, see, because it's a passive data center, so we try to keep it as minimum as possible. So we have only one orchestrator node. Only one orchestrator node. We have replication for our shared storage to here as well, to the secondary data center. Same for SQL Server, the replication, and the same replication is required for Elasticsearch as well, because we need everything available in case of disaster. But there is a drawback with this scenario. Here, in case of disaster, somebody has to, first of all, make the system up, and then you have to make your DNS entries changed so that, this orchestrator will become the same as for this. So the same, you should have the same certificate, which is utilizing here. You should be here. Otherwise, your robot may start facing some issues. You should have the same URL. So you have to make the changes in your DNS that the same URL will start sending the traffic to this server, not to this load balancer. We have solutions available for that as well. But again, as soon as you start adding more servers or more number of components into it, the cost will start increasing. So we have to make a balance between our cost as well as into the infrastructure we want. It can come from your compliance or your security team. Okay, you should have at least this kind of setup, or it may be your company requirement, or it may be some a third-party compliance requirement as well. Like for banking customer, there is a requirement for DR site from the Visa or MasterCard. In the same way, you can have this kind of from the compliance or something. Okay, so the next is basically the same thing, but here we have both the data centers are active. But as I say active, that means this will be the as it is. Only one difference. Here we have local load balancer as well as we have to have a global load balancer, because in this scenario, both the data centers are active. No users or robot is going to, differentiate like the load will be served from which orchestrator or from which data center. So for that, definitely, if we need to do something like that, we have to introduce few more components. First is load balancer. In place of one, now we have to have 3 load balancer, 1, 2, and 3. 2 are local load balancer and 1 is going to be the local global load balancer. Now we have to, again, because it's a highly available solution, in case of disaster, if this goes down, this should also act as a highly available solution for you. Again, So to make it highly available, we should have at least 2 orchestrator nodes here. And again, once you start increasing the orchestrator node from more than 1, you should have HA component available. Again, for HA component, you should have at least 3 nodes into your cluster. Same for SQL Server, you should have always on, or maybe on AWS, you should have multi-AG, and same with Azure. And same for Elasticsearch. Replication are still going on. There is one more thing which will come into picture, that is CRDB replication. CRDB replication is basically, it's just replicating the cache managed by this cluster and this cluster. So it's just syncing both the caches, so that in case, like suppose from this robot, first request goes to this orchestrator, and once it sends the next request, it goes to this orchestrator. So the cache should be managed or basically synced between all the nodes of the orchestrator. That is why we need HA cluster as well as the CRDB replication if we are going to have it active. But if you just see here, bare minimum, we need at least 1, 2, 3, 5 SQL Server, at least 2, and then Elasticsearch if you have it, again 3 at least, and same here. So just to make it, we need at least 10 or 12 servers available or VMs available, which is going to be a very costly affair for the COE, and it's not a very good idea from ROI's perspective. So the next thing is basically which the organization are adopting at this point is the IAC. IAC is basically infrastructure as code, where they are building their primary data center only from the code. When I say code, it can be CloudFormation scripts, it can be ARM templates from Azure, or it can be Terraform as well, which is a generic for all the service providers. So they build out their primary data center only because they build it out from the code. So whenever it will be required, they can execute into their secondary data center. It may be required that they have to do, adopt few changes, maybe DNS entries and all, but they can deploy everything into their secondary data center with just 1 or 2 clicks. It will take some time because you have to spin up all the hardware, VMs, and then installation and everything. It may take some time, but it's a cost-effective solution for the customers. Again, it depends upon your like organization requirement, how they want to pursue it, whether they want to go for IAC or they don't want to go. For an example, if you have any application which is very business critical, if it goes down for maybe 15 or 20 minutes, then there is a huge business or revenue loss for the company. Then you don't have any option. You should have active data centers. But if your application can bear some downtime, maybe in case of disaster only, maybe like 4 hours or 1 hour or 2 hour, then there is a very good option of IAC which you can try to adopt. We do have the scripts available already for AWS, which from where you can start utilizing it. It will give you all the necessary infrastructure, DNS entries, orchestrator nodes. It will install the orchestrator. It will provision HA for you. It will have SQL Server also provision on AWS. So these scripts are already available from UiPath, which you can build your solution to. I'd like to pass on to Nilekha from now onwards. Nilekha, over to you.
Yeah.
Just let me know whenever you need. Yeah. I'll request.
Don't get an option to change the slide.
I'll do that for you.
Okay. So guys, we have already discussed, Ankit has already guided you that there is a high availability add-on, which is a Redis Enterprise technology, which UiPath is using for high availability, and it is mandatory to have the high availability add-on. So there might be a question, why do we need additional non-persistent storage when we already have a SQL which is attached to your infrastructure? So when you have multiple orchestrator, there is an absolute need of data sync between these nodes. So that's why this cache comes into picture, which has a very low latency and high throughput. Hence, we are using that for the caching. It is absolutely needed for syncing orchestrator nodes. We store session information, licensing information, robot heartbeat, user roles, etc. So there might be a question, what happens if there is no high availability add-on between the orchestrator nodes? Will your application stop working? no, it will still be working. But the problem would be there would be a lot of concerns like the data between for the licensing would not be synchronized. Node A thinks the robot 1 is executing. However, node 2 does not have the same information and will try sending another bot on or another robot on the same node. So there would be a lot of concerns. For avoiding that, we have the high availability add-on placed between these orchestrator nodes. Ankit, next slide. So now we're going to cover a few of the data flows for the frequently used products. Like we are going to cover UiPath Robot, Orchestrator, Studio, and a couple of frequently used components. Other components we would take it in the subsequent session. So first is the UiPath Robot architecture I would want to talk, and the data flow. So when you install a UiPath Robot, there are a couple of components that gets installed. First is the UiPath Assistant. This is nothing but a user interface where you can execute your processes, majorly used for attended automations. Next is the robot service. So robot service is something which is like the heartbeat, which is taking most of the doing most of the work in this architecture. So UiPath Robot Service is something which is continuously interacting with the orchestrator by sending the heartbeat. It sends the heartbeat as a message saying what is the current status of the bot, what is the licensing details. So all this information is sent to the orchestrator every 30 seconds. If the orchestrator does not receive this information, the orchestrator would think that the robot is not available and it will not send any execution task to the robot. So that is why it is mandatory that you have to have robot service installed when you are running it in unattended mode. So apart from the robot service, you have a couple of other components. Like the robot.js update service. So robot.js is a service which is a Java SDK, which is used for embedding the robot into your target application. And the update service, we have newly introduced this in the product. It is available from 21.10 version. So this is basically to update the version of the orchestrator, update the version of your robot from the orchestrator. So this gives more control for your system administrators. It is easier for them to update if you have multiple bots running. The next is the executor. So whenever a bot is executed, the robot service passes the message to the executor, and it is the executor which is actually interacting with all your client applications during the automations. If you have UI automations or any SAP-based automation, it is the executor which is running, but the command is being given by the robot service. The next thing, which is very important, and there is a lot of misinterpretation, that who creates the robot session. Whenever you trigger a process from the orchestrator, most of the developers or RPA community thinks it is the orchestrator which is creating the Windows session, but that is incorrect. It is the robot service which receives all the credentials or whatever details it is needed to create the session. The robot is then creating a session of the Windows so that the robot can be executed or your program can be executed. So basically, in the complete architecture, robot services plays a very important role. Without it, actually, there cannot be any executions done. So it is interacting with your executor, it is interacting with your orchestrator, it is interacting with your assistant and all other services that exist on the robot. So if you go to your services.msc, you would see the robot service always running in case you have installed it in the service mode. For attended and the studio-based automations, it's okay to not have the service installed because it does not have to be continuously available. Okay, next slide. So let's talk about the Studio. Studio is an IDE where you would develop your code. So most of the developers are already aware about this product, which is Studio or Studio X. Based on your requirement, you can either use one of them, right? So the Studio is actually interacting with a lot of other tools, for example, different recorders, UI explorers, data scraping, based on whatever automation you would want to. And it has it also has something called as a package manager to resolve all your dependencies. For example, you're using Excel-based automations, you would need Excel-based activities. If you have any custom activities developed, it is the package manager in the Studio which is responsible for all of this. So we use NuGet, a NuGet server, basically, which is integrated with our product. So the Studio also has version control tools. It has TFS, SVN, Git, all these integrations available. It interacts with the robot service. As soon as you run the process, it is again the robot service's responsibility to pass it to the executor. And the same way which I explained in the previous slide, it is the executor then runs the automation. But again, the command is passed via robot service only. And whatever logs that are generated between the robot and the Studio, it is passed to the orchestrator in the form of an API. So you have something called as a submit log API, which is frequently sent from the robot service to the orchestrator. Studio also has a capability to create test cases. We have test automation, which is being implemented heavily right now. So the capability of the test automation is available in the Studio. So it has to interact to publish your use cases or publish your workflows, whichever you have created in the test manager. So it has the APIs available for the Studio to interact with your test manager and publish the code. Now, there is also an option for governance. Governance is something which is heavily being used. So you can govern whatever the implementation is happening on your Studio using the remote policies. You can push this governance from your orchestrator. You have automation ops, which has been newly launched. You can utilize automation ops. You have remote policies as well, which you can push it through group policies of your organization. Ankit, next slide. Next is the orchestrator. Orchestrator is actually the command center for us. This is the place where you manage all your processes and the robots. This is a one-stop solution where you can schedule your processes, trigger your bots, manage the licensing, etc. for your automation. So here there are a couple of components. You have the presentation layer, you have service layer, and the persistent layer. So a persistent layer is nothing but your SQL server where you are actually storing the data. Apart from the SQL, if you want, you can have Elasticsearch, which is for your log management. This is optional. Next is your service layer. Service layer has the business logic and the API implementation. So this is the place where we have all the integrations available. Let that be for your storage buckets, your CyberArk, credential stores. All of these are part of your business logic layer. In the presentation layer, we have the web applications, we have mobile applications, and the REST API endpoints. These REST API endpoints basically for configuration, logging, monitoring, queues. All of these are part of your orchestrator. And if you want to utilize them, for example, you would want to start your process from outside the RPA, these API endpoints are exposed. You can call these APIs and start your processes on demand. The major important part is the logging. The logging, we use nlog mechanism. So right now, if you see, I have told you that we send the data to the Elasticsearch and the SQL. But in case you want to interact with any other application, for example, if you want to send the data to the Splunk or any other tools, any other databases, that's also possible. Only thing is it needs to support the nlog. So you can send the data to MongoDB as well if you can configure this configuration in the orchestrator. Next is the identity. Ankit spoke about the identity. Here, the orchestrator, we deploy it as a separate website in the IIS. You would see the identity in 20.4 onwards. This is the website which we have created for managing all the access for all of our products in the platform. So let that be the test suite, AI Center, whatever product. Identity is the product. Identity is a website which is managing all the authentication and authorization. So we have different identity providers. We have SAML, Google, Active Directory integrations available. So this website gets auto-deployed when you deploy your orchestrator. Apart from this, you have notification and monitoring. This service is basically a webhook, which is continuously sending any events that occur on the website, like your job is not working, or if your robot got disconnected, if the heartbeat has not reached, the data would not be sent. So this notification and monitoring service is responsible to send it to your target application wherever you wish to. And next is the integration of storage bucket. This is also interesting. UiPath, in case you want to use in your RPA implementation a temporary storage location, you can leverage storage buckets. You have the option of integrating with S3 buckets, Azure storage buckets. All of these options are available. You can configure it in your web app. The interface has the option to configure the storage bucket and can be utilized in your RPA. This feature is being used heavily with action center use cases where you want to showcase your documents during interactions. And the next topic is the quads. If you're scheduling your processes, so there is something called quads, which is responsible for triggering your processes on time. For example, you want to trigger, if you're creating a job which triggers at 7 p.m., Quartz is responsible for triggering that. In case of a multi-node deployment, we need to make sure that the Quartz are synchronized between both the nodes. We need to make sure the server time is synchronized because Quartz is highly dependent on your system time. So when you say Quartz has a lot of jobs, which are, few of them are internal jobs, which basically run every few minutes for maintaining the application, like notification services or a couple of other internal jobs for maintaining the queues, maintaining pending jobs, etc. These are internal, which are basically used for maintaining the app. However, most of them are external based on whatever triggers that you create in the application. So this is a library from the .NET framework that we are using. And this application is a web application that we deploy in our IaaS in case you're going for a IaaS in kind of an infrastructure on an on-prem installation on a Windows operating system. But now we have some options available where you can deploy this as a part of automation suite, which is the Linux-based configuration. And get next slide. So this is a complete flow, which I wanted to showcase. Like you have orchestrator, robot service, and the executor. So if you see, the orchestrator is creating a WebSocket layer between orchestrator and the robot service. And then it is robot service, which is creating a Windows session here. And within the Windows session, there is a robot executor, which is processing the application. So this is what I was trying to explain in previous slides, how the flow between these apps are and who creates these Windows sessions and how are they created. Get next slide. Another important topic or important application that is being frequently used is UiPath AI Center and document understanding. I've taken both AI Center and document understanding in the same slide. The reason being document understanding is nothing but a ML model, which is deployed on the AI Center platform. So AI Center is nothing but an AI platform that is designed to train, deploy, and manage your ML models. So UiPath has a more than 30 ML models, which are proprietary and few of them are open source. However, you can bring your own ML model and deploy it in our platform. Document understanding is one model which is deployed on the in our AI Center architecture. So AI Center has couple of services, so a couple of core services which are managing the cluster. For example, the provisioning service, model management, data management, deployer, helper. So these are few of the services which are continuously running to create the containers in the Kubernetes cluster and manage the complete cluster. Then you have a couple of dynamic services like ML skills, training pipeline, etc. These are basically used for your training when you're training the pipeline of whatever, training the model of whatever UiPath has provided. So UiPath has provided a model which are retrainable. So you can run these pipelines and make sure they work as per your needs. So based on whatever you try to deploy, these dynamic services come into picture. So I wanted to walk you through how the interaction happens. Like the robot has the activities for the AI center. For example, all the document understanding, you have a separate package, and robot interacts with these the platform directly, and it can have all the ML models and ML skills shown in the robot or the studio itself. You can just call them and you can expect the response back with whatever threshold or whatever prediction the model is giving, you would receive that directly on the robot. You can have a hybrid architecture here where the orchestrator is on premise and the AI center is deployed on the SaaS. So because the AI center deployment is on Kubernetes and the infrastructure cost is high because of the technologies needed and because of the artificial intelligence, which takes up a lot of configuration, we have seen a lot of customers going hybrid on the document understanding in the AI center, where Orchestrator Command Center and the Robot Studio are a part of your on-premise. However, this particular bit, which is pricey, is deployed on the SaaS, and you can consume them directly from the SaaS. In case you want all the configurations within your platform, you have two options again. You can go with the complete suite where Orchestrator is installed along with your AI center within the suite, or else you can have automation suite installed with AI center product alone, and you can still utilize your orchestrator whichever you are running in case you're trying to adapt newly this feature. So we have both these scenarios available when in case you are trying to deploy this product on premise within the customer network. So here the robot is interacting directly with the AI center to pull up the models and the skills. So it is okay to go hybrid. Ankit, can you go to the next slide? So next is the Action Center. Because we spoke about the document understanding, Action Center is important. Action Center is a product which we have launched to make sure the human robot handoff is very smooth. So Action Center is basically a web interface where you can take appropriate actions for wherever there is exceptions or there is any human decision that needs to be taken. So earlier, without the Action Center, the bot would wait for the action to be completed. We do not want to go ahead with that. We wanted to better utilize your processes, better utilize your licenses. Hence, the Action Center had come into picture. So if you see the data flow, all of the components like Studio has the Action Center activities for creating form tasks, etc. So once the action is created in the robot, it is the orchestrator, which is here. If you see, this is the orchestrator where it has the APIs available for which are called for long running workflow. So once there is an action taken in the Action Center UI, the process which was waiting is resumed from the orchestrator. So if you see the flow, we have orchestrator into picture, we have robot into picture. It's a different website altogether. So you have this Node.js server. This is a complete new website we have. Earlier it was part of the orchestrator, but now we have segregated it as a separate website, and it is available on the client browser where they can take the action. So if you see the flow, it creates the task, it goes to the wait status. Once you have the action taken on the Node.js server or the application, it will resume itself. So right now with the current architecture, Action Center does not have its own database. It is using the database from the orchestrator itself. So the advantage it has is it's very lightweight application. You can deploy it is either on PaaS or you can deploy it on Prem or IaaS. All the options are available for this product. Next, we wanted to talk about the deployment architecture components. So if you see whatever Ankit had explained, we had SaaS, on-prem, AWS, Azure, different options available. So if you see, we have mentioned what is the kind of server you would need for each product, whether the load, what kind of load balancers, how the packages are managed, where the studio can be installed, if the Redis is required, database is required. So we have configured, or we have documented based on what we have seen with our past experiences and the product requirement or the prerequisites. We have also shown few examples in the next slides.
Nilika, you want to explain a little bit about it, or?
Okay, so in case you're seeing the UiPath cloud environment, if you this is a SaaS based offering. So here, if you see, there is no database needed, no Redis, nothing, because it is all UiPath which is managing, and only thing you need to bring in is your robots, your studio bots. In case of on-prem, the orchestrator is deployed on the Windows server. The database, you can either have the Windows server, or you can go for SQL hybrid as well. Like half the products are on-prem and half the products are like SQL can be on cloud as well. Only thing is you need to have high throughput so that there is no latency with the applications. Redis HA is always on the Linux. You can have software load balancer, hardware load balancer. For the log management, you can have Elasticsearch on Windows Server, or you can go for Elasticsearch on as a service as well. That's up to you. You can have shared packages. You can go on hybrid again on the storage buckets. Insights, we will talk about this session. Insights completely on the fourth session, which is planned in this series. Windows Server and the Linux server are the new requirement for the latest version. So we will talk about why we have segregated, or why the requirement of two servers is coming into picture now. We have not covered this topic today, but just for your reference, this is the configuration that you would need. Again, the studio, you can go on Windows Server, you can go on desktop machines, VDI. Citrix also is okay if you wish to go there. On the AWS, we'll have EC2 instances. Majorly, it's better that in case you go with the AWS, it's better if you go in the same, deploy all the resources in the same region. You get better throughput, or better performance there. So you can have the databases again in the EC2 instances. You can create a server and deploy the database, or you can go with the RDS, which is SQL as a service. On the Redis as well, you can go ahead and use AWS Elastic Cache for Redis. It is not supported by UiPath, but it would still work. Otherwise, you would have to go with EC2 instances of the Linux operating system. Load balancer, AWS Elastic Load Balancer is supported. For the log management, again, the same. Elasticsearch can be installed on the EC2 instance, or AWS Elasticsearch can be utilized. Infrastructure as a code, Ankit given a brief about. We have Terraform and CloudFormation scripts created by UiPath, which you can utilize to deploy the complete infrastructure. Packages, recommendation is to have AWS S3 bucket. In case you are on AWS, it will give you better performance. Insights, again, Windows and Linux, we will cover this in the upcoming sessions. Robot, EC2 instance, AWS workspaces, you can go ahead with your own on-prem machines, but because of the locations of these servers, you might face issues with the, you might face network issues or some latency. So it is recommended you to have EC2 instances in the same region. In the Azure, here we have EC2 instance. Here we will have Azure VM or Azure App Service. We have spoken about the PaaS deployment. So App Service is nothing but a PaaS deployment. Databases, again, Azure VM can be created, or Azure SQL can be used, which is again a PaaS service from the Microsoft. HA, Azure VM, Azure Cache for Redis, not supported by UiPath, but it would work most of the time. So you can have Azure Load Balancer. Log management is same. Elasticsearch on Azure VM, Elasticsearch on created Azure VM. You can perform. We have Terraform and ARM scripts created, which can be leveraged. Azure Storage for packages and Azure VM for both Windows and Linux machines for the insights. For the studio, Azure VM and Azure VDI are recommended in case you deploy your infrastructure on Azure.
Okay, so we have few examples as well, but first I think it will be good if we take the questions.
Anybody wants to unmute yourself and ask the questions?
No, let me just share the Slido.
Yeah.
So let me read out the questions on Slido. I'm not able to.
And I can share otherwise.
Yeah, not an issue. So the first question is deployment cover AWS, Azure, and GCP. Balaraman, if you can just elaborate on your question. If I'm not wrong, I think you are asking for whether we can do it on AWS, Azure, or GCP. So all three are available. You can go for AWS, Azure, or GCP. We do have customers who are leveraging these service providers. If it doesn't answer your question, please unmute yourself and please feel free to take a follow-up questions.
Guys, you can also vote from here. So that way, most important question will come up and we will ensure that that gets answered.
Okay, so next question is basically from Manoj. How can we make sure that DR is also up and running if there is some issue with the active primary data center? What should be the best practices? So Manoj, for your answer, basically, if you are going to have a DR site, there are two ways. First of all, I think you should test these scenarios. Basically, we never left. Okay, we provisioned a DR site, and we never tested it. In maybe 6 months, normally whenever the organizations have DR sites available, they have a mandate like every 6 months or every year, they should test it. They should create a scenario of DR and test the DR site, whether everything is going up or not, or whatever they have documented, whether the DR site is coming up or not.
Thank you.
I haven't received meeting invite for the next meeting in this series. Can you please register yourself onto the session? You should be getting the invite.
I just sent the invite link on the chat. So if you visit that, you will be able to see all the upcoming session.
If I have single machine orchestrator, can I have a DR site? Yes, definitely you can have DR site. But before to DR, because disaster scenarios are basically a rare scenario once you are on any service provider. So they do take care of basically a lot of things. So DR it can happen, but it's a very rare scenario. So I think before going for DR site, you should think about your highly available solution. So you see if you have only single node orchestrator, so going that particular VM down or its network got choked or maybe database goes down is very high in place of a DR actually. So I would recommend you to go first for the high availability and then think about the DR site. But from technical perspective or from process perspective, it's possible. The next question is, why there is a need of more than one orchestrator node? Does it mean that there will be separate orchestrator installed on different servers? Yes, if you are going with the multi-node or highly available solution, you should have different nodes. Why it is required? Because in case one server goes down, there should be another server which is serving your entire traffic. In case you have very heavy load, for an example, you have 1,000 robots or maybe 2,000 robots. Sometimes it's not only the orchestrator application which can get choked, sometimes it's the network or maybe the CPU or the RAM which got choked, and you will not have any application which is serving your load. So that is why you should have multiple nodes of Orchestrator once you are saying that your solution is highly available. It's not only highly availability, it's about load management as well. It's about your criticality of processes as well. In case you're running some automations which are very critical for your organization, you should have it. And multi-node architecture is definitely required once you have multi-node or basically highly available solution. Next option I can think of is maybe you can leverage.
Hi, Ankit.
Yeah, hi.
I have a follow-up question on that multi-node that we're just talking about. Does it mean that each instance of the orchestrator would need a separate license?
No. It will be only one license.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So only one thing where if you don't want to have multiple orchestrator nodes, I know a solution from AWS, they call it auto scaling groups, where in case one server goes down, it will spin up another machine, but it's going to take some time, maybe 5 or 10 minutes. It will take first to provision the VM and then to install the orchestrator. So it will come up, but again, it's going to give you a downtime. So I will not recommend it as a highly available solution. It's not a highly available solution.
Right, but if you had the multi-node already installed and configured and everything, it will still come under one organization license.
Yes, it will be one organization license for a user perspective. There is no difference. They have only one URL. Maybe like if you take an example of cloud.uipath.com, it's a one URL for you. How many nodes are spin up in the background? You don't know.
Right.
And
Also,
once you
Surya,
procure
the
something,
license information we store in the database. So there is a single database. So you would not need a separate license for each node that you have. However, you would need a separate license for your HA component, which is mandatory for a multi-node setup.
What is the other component you mentioned?
HA, high availability add-on.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So you need a separate license for that. However, for the orchestrator explicitly, we don't charge it for a single node or a multi-node. It is same.
Oh, thank you. That makes sense.
And this is Harish. I have a question. So if I have only two nodes, like if customer puts a condition that you maximum can use two orchestrated nodes, okay, and you need to provide as a high availability. So is the HA is the only option here?
sorry, could you please come again?
Okay.
I missed your voice actually.
Okay,
maybe
we have
network.
only two orchestrated nodes. Okay. And we want to go ahead with high availability. So if we want to use this option, so HA is the only option. Like if you want to use multi-node, so we have two zones, okay, or two regions. Okay, I want to have orchestrator one on one region of AWS and in the other region, the other one. Okay, and as you know, both are managed by a load balancer, a global load balancer, like you said in your architecture. So in this case, if one server goes down, the other will automatically come up. Okay. So in this case, in order to achieve this high availability, so HA is the only option, or do we have any alternatives?
You can use AWS Elastic Cache, but as mentioned by Nilekha, it is not supported from UiPath. But it works. Technically, it works, but we do not support that scenario. If something will come up, like if something is not working, you may need to reach out to AWS. One more thing I'd like to mention, you mentioned that you have two servers. One is one reason, another one is another reason. It's not recommended for highly available solution. It's recommended for DR, but not highly available. Because now you may have, you just think you have Elastic Cache. It will be provisioned in one region. Now there will be very much latency between one region to another region. You may need to pair your BPCs and all. So it will take some time. But cache should not be see, Elastic Cache or HHA is basically a cache management software. Cache should be very fast. It should not have latency like 1 second or 2 seconds. You cannot bear that actually. Otherwise, there is no, your system is not highly available. If the request will go to another node, it will not serve because it doesn't know it.
Right.
Maybe
So,
it's not authenticate.
Right. So I understand that there will be a latency. So in that case, instead of having both in two different regions, we can have in two different zones, right?
Yes.
So if one zone goes down, okay, say if you have ABC, if A goes down, so the B1 will at least be alive. So in that case, the latency will be reduced because both are in the same zone.
Yes.
At the end of the day. So even in this case, the HA is the only region, right? If I want to use a scenario of multi-orchestrator, multi-node orchestrator.
Either you should have HA or you can go for AWS Elastic Cache. Both options are available. Only thing is Elastic Cache is not supported by UiPath.
Okay, because I have HA license at the moment, and we have a 3 node like a 8.0, like a Red Hat Linux 8.0 I'm using. So there is an issue because we using Terraform and the cluster is not getting created. Okay, the installation is happening, but the cluster is not getting created. So we are stuck up at that moment. And we were asking for a, instead of active passive, we were asking for an active active to have more than one, more than 2 orchestrator nodes, but the customer is not giving the approval because, you know, AWS is cost
yes
bound. So that is the, you know, that is a bracket that the customer has put, that you have to only use 2 orchestrator servers and it should be highly available. So
if say 2 things here, I think I already covered this. When you are going for highly available or BCP, there is a cost component come into picture where you need to think about the cost actually. So you have to make a balance. If you want highly available, you need 2 nodes. There is no alternate to it. Once you have 2 nodes, you need a cache management software which is going to manage your cache. Okay. The next thing is DR. Again, the cost come into picture. If you want to have DR, you should have to provision few servers, or you have to go for IAC, where you are not provisioning any server at this point. Once DR will come, you will provision those servers. So that is the next option you can think of, IAC, where you have provisioned everything from your CloudFormation scripts in your one region. Once DRs will happen, you provision these into your another region.
Okay, then so at the moment, 2 orchestrator servers
Yeah,
are
Harif,
sufficient with
probably
HA,
no.
right?
I would like to give other people also a chance to ask any question if they have.
Yeah, we have few questions on Slido
Yeah.
which I'd like to cover.
Yes.
So the question is, when job goes on suspended mode, where we store the info and how is work to resume the job? Nilika, you want to take it?
So the data with respect to the statuses are stored in the database, but to resume it, you should use either APIs or you should use your front-end options only. You cannot make any changes to the database directly. We do not recommend that.
If we only, the next question, if we only scale up robots during peak periods from 5 to 30 for 1 week per year, any flexible charge license plan for this approach? No, we don't have that option available for on-prem at least.
Hello.
Vishal.
This is
Your voice is breaking, so we can't hear you. In the meantime, we'll take another question. Maybe you can adjust your voice in the meantime.
yeah. So my question is like when job. So the job is resume any orchestrator. Okay. So the information means like the all the variables value they will store where like in a database. If it is stored in a database, then like how the process like the how orchestrator know where we have to start and like the application which we run with the which position we have to work with, what are the current value of that variable, where we like store this information and how it's work. That's my question.
We do have, Vishal, we do have documentation available. What kind of variable you should not use when you are using long running workflows? There are few dependencies on few types of variables where you have some serializations available and serialization not available.
Yes,
Please check the documentation once. We can take follow-up questions in subsequent sessions. That's fine, not an issue. But please go through with the documentation first.
yeah, I
That's my
already go
recommendation.
through. Yeah.
So you have to think about those variable types. If you have that kind of thing, then high availability, long running workflow or the action center scenario will not work for you. Second thing, it is Second thing is everything will be stored like in memory on the orchestrator side. Once it will resume the job, it will send that in memory to the basically it's a serialized object which will be sent back to the robot wherever the job is resuming.
Yeah, I wanted to know the mechanism, like which services they do, and what is the what are the services we required to do this job, like to resume the job and store the information.
You just need robot, action center, and orchestrator. Nothing else you need.
So you mentioned some services also, no? While like AI center, the action center.
The AI center, for AI center, when you need validation, you need action center. But there is no dependency of action center to having AI center. You can have different processes which are just using action center.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so next question is, in case of multi-node orchestrator, how data sync up happen between two orchestrator? It's HA, which is managing all this. Installation covers only individual products or automation suite as well. For now, we have planned only for standalone applications, but we are already in discussion for automation suite as well. As soon as we have something prepared, we will announce it on the chapter. Please keep an eye on the chapter. What is the difference between data and storage? I didn't get your question. Data is just data, and storage may be an SQL server or maybe your hard drive.
I think this was a question when we were showing the PaaS, IaaS, SaaS option. So data is actually
Okay.
your application data, and storage is like a SQL server or Elasticsearch, whatever, wherever you store the actual data. So you have to manage your actual data from the application, but the application itself, like the SQL, are managed by the cloud providers.
Okay, we have a few more questions. Let me take up. AI Center not available as standalone. What happens to customers who already have it? So they have to migrate to either to Automation Suite or they have to use it from Automation Cloud. How many nodes suggested for heavy requests? Please go to the documentation. It's already documented when you should have different nodes in terms of load. PaaS available for UiPath services in Azure or only Orchestrator? It's available from Azure. It's not only Orchestrator. It is available for Task Manager as well as for Action Center. One question come up. UiPath upgrade are done automatically or after confirmation from customer if technology is deployed on customer cloud or on-prem? UiPath upgrade will be managed by the customer if it is installed on IaaS, PaaS, or on-prem. Only the cloud offering or SaaS offering where UiPath is deciding when this upgrade is going to happen. What frequency Azure upgrade the orchestrator version? Orchestrator doesn't upgrade the orchestrator version. It's only the marketplace application which UiPath is going to upgrade every time. But that is just the marketplace application. If you have deployed it from anything from that application, it will not be upgraded. That is something you have to take care by your own. Can we use UiPath storage bucket to store config file and other file used by the bot? Yes, you can use the storage bucket that is meant for that purpose only. Do you have any plan to bring Automation Suite as PaaS offering in cloud? We'll have to park this question and need to discuss with the product team whether we have something in plan or not at this point. But at least I don't know.
So we had it for the AI Center until 21.4 for Azure AKS, which we are planning to get it back in the coming versions. But as of today, we do not have a PaaS option available. But the work is happening for at least AI Center because that's frequently being asked for by the customers.
So meanwhile, guys, any other question which is not there on this slide and you want to ask, feel free to unmute and ask.
We have one quiz as well, which we want to publish.
Yeah, you will have to share your screen then.
Yes. Go back. Please scan it. Please scan this. so that we can you can have questions. In the meantime, I'm taking the questions for next 2 minutes. While triggering any process from Orchestrator, how we can set the triggering of a process in a specific machine instead of it. We have this option available on the triggers. Depending upon the which version you are using of Orchestrator, if you are going with 21.10 or 22.4, we have more flexibility in terms of selecting the application which you want, like the machine and user combination. What is DR data center? Yes.
Oh, sorry, just a quick question regarding the UiPath version. Do you guys recommend your customers to already deploy the newest version? The latest release was 22.4, or should we wait a little bit more for an update?
I think you should go for 22.4.
Okay, thank
So
you.
it's a long-term supported version.
Yeah, it's a long-term supported version, and whenever we are releasing something, it's already well tested, and we cover most of the scenarios which is known to us. It may be possible that few things may not work or may not work as expected. We do release for patches as well, but once we release something, it's well tested, and like in terms of stability and everything, it's all tested, everything.
Thank you, Ankit.
So I'm going to start the quiz for now. Please join the quiz. You should have received a request on your browser if you have already scanned it. Only 12 people. Should I start it? How many we have? We have 50.
So probably you can give few more seconds.
You can scan this. It will take you to the quick Q&A. Please join it.
Or you can just go to slido.com and then go to UiPath platform.
I'll give it 1 more minute. We are already at time. Should we start, Vibhor, or wait for a few more minutes?
Yeah, let's start.
Okay, so this is your first question. You have 20 seconds to answer it. Okay. So the right answer is true. Yes. This is the leaderboard. Next question on your screen. Oh, it's wrong. True is not good, actually. It's false. HA is not a persistence data store. I still Ricardo on the top. Next question. Ah, 67% are saying true. It's false, actually. Automation Suite is not a PaaS deployment. I already mentioned during the presentation, it's a IES deployment. Ricardo is still on top. Next question. 83% are saying 83. All of the above, that's correct. Says yes, we do have, but we have all these two options as well. So it's all of the above is correct answer here. Oh, it's changed. Hemang is on the top now. Next question. %76% are right. It's a robot service which is managing it. Hemang is still on the top. And the last question. %70, 1% people are saying UiPath. Yes, that's correct. So Hemang win this contest. Bibhor, can we have a surprise goodie for Hemang? Hello, Bibhor, you there?
Yeah, sorry, my machine got hanged. Yes, so Hemang, if you can share your email ID with me, we will send you a voucher which you can use on UiPath store. Or maybe Ankit, you can send anything. Just kidding. I will send. Guys, if you're okay,
Yes,
you can switch on your camera. We can quickly take one picture, if it's fine with all of you. And any other feedback or what you would like to learn, in infrastructure series, any specific topic which is not yet published.
I
Oh,
think you
sorry.
have to allow.
Yeah. Sorry, now it's allowed. Yeah, I will give 2 more seconds if anyone wants to switch on camera. Okay, 1, 2. Thank you so much, Ankit, Nilekha, Anand, and everyone who joined this session. Also, if you have any feedback, please do give that to us. Anything else you want to learn, please share that. And next session will be happening on 4th August, same time. See you again. Have a great day, evening. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. Have a nice day or evening.